I think the relational aspect and focus on Christianity tends to fall into the theology category. Because at the end of the day, religion is very ritualistic. It's like giving sacrifices in some way to some sort of deity. And so if you're not doing that, but you claim that you worship a God and you have a relationship with that God that's a personal, loving one, not like a sacrificial one, and you have a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how do you do that? It's so funny. First century, Christians actually used to be referred to as atheists because the pagans were going to their temples, they were giving their sacrifices and stuff, and that was how religion was done. But then you had these Christians who didn't have temples, they weren't giving sacrifices, and the people at the time were like, you guys are religious? How are you worshiping this God? What? You're not doing anything. There's no way you believe in a God. Otherwise, you'd be doing all these other things. Yeah. And so I think if you emphasize that relationship, like a lot of non-denominational Christians do, you fall in that category of being a theologian somehow, because all you're talking about is God's relationship with reality.
Yeah, if I'm not living out the Bible, then what am I doing?
Exactly.
Right. It's funny that you say that because that makes me think like, we're not the most devout, religion or relationship anymore, because of all these subcategories of religions that exist, with just how Mormonism has evolved, Catholicism has evolved, Islam has evolved into these places where it's now, some of those are political conversations that are not fun. Some of those are, hey, we believe this so firmly that nothing else can exist in life. And that's actually how we're supposed to believe, but the way it's presented by other, these subtypes of Christianity is literally pulling people away from church. And I'd love to kind of hear you speak to what you think's going on with that and kind of where we're at with all those things.
Yeah, well, in the Christian church in particular, I think the largest issue that is the foundation of all the other issues is just soft theology. That's something I've personally realized over the last 2 years.
Doesn't every big church feel like they have to do it now?
Well, they have to. Yeah, of course, because that's stinks. What people want, right?
Yeah, it stinks, but that's where every big church is.
Yeah, it is, because people don't come to church for the godly knowledge and truth. They come for the experience, the emotional experience. Yeah. And emotions are part of us spiritually. Okay, that's a different discussion for another time out, the breakout, at least my perspective on the spirit, mind, soul, etc. But emotions are fine. They're part of who you are as a person. But when you're making an appeal in the body collectively of church, of people who are professing faith in Jesus Christ, the emphasis should be on growing our understanding of the truth. And we should be singing that out in our worship. We should be preaching that from the pulpit, but we're not doing that because we've catered to the experience for the sake of being quote unquote seeker sensitive. And that just causes a lot of issues at pretty much every level of the church, youth, young adults, big church, everything. So you see those issues caused, and then you see a lot of people be very hesitant to go to church because it's like, well, either I'm going to walk into an environment where it's all ritualistic and it's very moralistic, and if I don't do all these things, the God's going to hate me, or I walk into a church where it's just all fun and games. It's just an experience where people are singing about this magical
we have experienced a church together that is very performance based. Not to say it's fake, but like it's about the lights, it's about the laughs, it's about the fall on my knees before you. And those things are not bad by themselves, but they are bad if that's most of what the Sunday experience is, right?
Even then, I have zero issue with rocking out. Believe me, I would be at the forefront of the creation of a church that sung solid biblical truth, that preached solid biblical truth, and that had an absolute banger worship set with like a concert type of vibe. But it's about the truth element, I think, for me.
I'm saying like those things shine above the things that actually matter in our Sunday.
Right.
And that's why it's scary. It's such a bummer that like, I think especially in here in Denver, that is so prevalent. Even in the churches that aren't even that big. You know what? Let's go into that though. tell me about why you go to the church you go to, and kind of what excites you about and what fills you up at your church, for sure.
Yeah. So after getting married, before getting married, I met my wife at Mission Hills. So that's one of those larger churches. I think they're technically qualified to be a mega church based on their
huge
attendance weekly. So we went there. After that, we kind of felt like we wanted more personal connection with the people in the church, and that's harder to get at a larger church where there's just a larger number of people, larger number of programs, and generally people who are there are not as grounded in their faith. They're typically newer to faith or more casual in their faith. So when we got married in August of 2025, I have to say that now, we're in 2026. It's so weird. We started going to a small little Reformed evangelical church right down the block, actually, which was great. I loved that experience, except for I'm not super big on the historical tethering of faith. I believe that God is obviously eternal. That's the God of the Bible. And so I like the theology. I like their preaching style. I'm not as post-millennial as they are. I don't know. I'm not sure how familiar
you're
an
older soul for people who don't know.
Right. Yeah. I am. Yeah. And so I like that vibe. That's a fine vibe to me, but I don't like tethering faith to just one period of time, the Christian Reformation. And so all the studying of like the Puritans and stuff, great. They said great things, but I'm focused on how to be a light in this generation, which is completely different from that one in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So we went there for about 3 months, learned some things there, made some decent relationships. It was a good time. But we go to Calvary Church in Inglewood now. Different than Calvary Chapel, very different. Calvary Church is like Baptist, SBC, Southern Baptist Convention.
It's not evangelical, but it touches that a little bit.
It is. It's not the non-denominational evangelical. No. It's more... it's just Baptist. That's what it is. They tilt Calvinist Baptist though, which is like with a smaller proportion of the SBC. And so there's a lot of focus on the sovereignty of God, his influence in our hearts and the response to what he's doing. Less of an emphasis on us just being autonomous creatures who can create our own destiny and make decisions and stuff like that. So we like that experience because it's very biblically grounded. They walk through scripture every single week. So the last time we went, they were in 1 John. We haven't been in a while because of the holiday season, but they're just walking verse by verse, extracting the truth concepts in context and just feeding the body with that understanding. And that's what church is. It's also interesting to me the way they have their church set up with their elder board. That's obviously a very biblical grounding, but you don't see that a lot in Protestant churches today. There's usually, at least in the non-denominational sector again. So you have the guy who's like the main pastor, the senior pastor, and then you have like the associate pastors who are kind of like under him in some sense. The elders here all have different roles based on their experience in ministry, but they all will like alternate teaching on Sundays. And so there's not like the one guy. There's probably the senior preaching elder.
Does it feel like a healthy balance to you?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Because one week I'll hear from a guy who has a different approach, maybe an evangelistic approach to faith, and that's his spiritual gifting. And then the next week I'll hear from the guy who's the theologically gifted guy, and he'll walk through the text in a different way than that guy will. And so it really helps build the body's perspective on faith from a complete perspective. And I think that's what we like about that church so far since starting to go there.
Okay, that's good.